Welcome to the Communication and Autism-focused training provided by the Kentucky Autism Training Center. I'm Heather Page Alger, a speech-language pathologist. I am certified by the American Speech-Language Hearing Association, known as ASHA. I serve as a field training coordinator for the Kentucky Autism Training Center and will be hosting this training. The Kentucky Autism Training Center serves all of Kentucky with the mission to strengthen our state's systems of support for persons affected by autism. We bridge the gap between research and practice via providing training and resources. We are committed to improving the quality of life for those affected by autism. The Kentucky Autism Training Center develops, coordinates, and directly models practices with programs for promoting the education of autistic students. We partner with other agencies and groups, including the regional educational cooperatives, to provide training and coaching of educators and other service providers for providing high-quality services for autistic people. The Kentucky Autism Training Center promotes the use of research-based practices by training practitioners of various disciplines in building statewide capacity for high-quality services across the lifespan for autistic people. The title of this training presentation, Communication, Low-Tech Tools Embedded into Everyday Opportunities, will target these areas: identifying examples of low-tech communication tools and ways to integrate the use of those tools in various settings, including the home or a clinical therapy setting, and applying strategies to support language development using low-tech communication tools. The overall goal of this presentation is to provide examples of easy-to-make low-tech communication tools that could be created quickly and relatively cost-free. Think homemade, using common items found in the home or even in a clinical office setting. The participants will have access to today's presentation using the QR code. Additional resources will be available within the QR code. Just use your phone's camera directed to the QR code to follow the link to the information. Just a note before we begin the actual presentation. Persons with autism may be referred to in this presentation using person-first language, such as a child with autism, or identity-first language, such as autistic child, to accommodate differences in individual preferences. Now, let's get to the heart of the training. Communication. Understanding a message. Conveying a message. Using verbal, speaking, or nonverbal communication. For example, eye contact, body language, written language like a text message to express yourself. Think about the ease in which we communicate with each other, how we read or interpret the message from the communication partner. Now, think about how our lives would be impacted if our communication abilities are interrupted or delayed. Think about how your day would be different if you are misunderstood by your communication partner without the ability or a method for repairing the misunderstanding, the miscommunication. Think about how frustrated you would become if you could not communicate your wants needs, feelings, or thoughts. These are the communication challenges faced by autistic people daily. Let's set the stage in our presentation by delving into the diagnostic criteria for autism. Just what is autism spectrum disorder, or ASD? As defined by the American Psychiatric Association Desk Reference Manual, known as the DSM-5, ASD is a neurological disorder, meaning that the disorder affects the brain. There are 3 deficit social communication characteristics associated with autism. First, social interactions with others are deficient. One may notice that conversational turn-taking or the natural back and forth flow to a conversation is affected. Second, nonverbal communication is impacted. Lack of eye contact and deficits in understanding and the use of gestures, along with the lack of facial expressions and/or nonverbal communication is seen. Third, deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships are exhibited, such as play behaviors, including imaginative play and making friends with the absence of interest in peers. In addition, 2 out of 4 additional criteria are included in the diagnosis of autism: restricted, repetitive behaviors, insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior, highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus, and/or hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input, or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. So what does communication include? For what purposes do we communicate? Communication has numerous purposes, which include our need to request, communicating to gain access to an object or person or activity. One may say, "I want cake," or the child will point to a cake to make the request. Refuse, communicating to refuse or reject an object or person, or comply with a direction or participate in an activity. An example of refusal is saying, "No chocolate cake for me," or showing nonverbally by the shaking of our head, indicating no when presented the chocolate cake, that we do not want the chocolate cake. One may also use communication to express feelings or emotions. Keep in mind these communicative functions as we progress through the presentation, since this information will help to guide you as you think about low-tech communication tools and the creation of low-tech communication tools. These are some of the communication functions that can be targeted when helping the autistic person to communicate using low-tech tools. Let's review how children acquire language and use language. Language acquisition begins in infancy with the baby's cries to get needs met, for example. Those cries communicate that the baby needs something or that the infant is not comfortable. The caregiver responds to those cries in order to determine the infant's need. As the infant develops and refines the communication system, the cries progress to coos, facial expressions such as frowns or smiles, pointing or gesturing, and eye gazing at a desired object or person. Then the baby will build upon the communication attempts by adding the ability to say parts of words such as E for eat. Next, first words and phrases follow. A baby will typically start saying the first words around age 1. A medical professional, such as the child's doctor, will usually ask about the emergence of first words at the 1-year checkup for the child and may inquire further about language development, such as the child's sentence usage and combinations at subsequent checkups as the child ages. Next, let's discuss non-typical language acquisition and the expression of needs and wants, requests, and refusals. When the typical sequence of language development fails to develop, deviates, or is interrupted, then a child may act out to communicate. The child may lack the words or nonverbal communication to express the wants and needs which may be seen in children with autism. The child may scream, sit down on the floor to indicate refusal, throw items, grab, kick, run, or squeeze. The child may also laugh, which may be another unexpected form of communication that does not match the communication situation or event. As the communication continues in a breakdown or failure for the autistic person to communicate the want, need, refuse, or to express a feeling or emotion, then the unexpected, observable, outward displays of atypical communication can escalate. The communication partner or the person trying to interpret the message cannot understand or interpret what the child is attempting to communicate. The low-tech communication tool could be a targeted intervention in assisting the autistic person in using a system that they understand and that the communication partner will understand. These atypical or non-standard ways of communicating are misunderstood by the communication partner. The autistic person may lack the typical or expected vocabulary word to communicate. In these instances, the low-tech communication tool could be utilized to assist the autistic person with understanding and applying an object, picture, or word to replace the atypical display of language expression. The low-tech tool could become part of the communication intervention and used by those communication partners within the autistic person's environment. It is especially noteworthy to understand that every action or behavior is a communication attempt. Again, every action or behavior displayed by a child is a communication attempt. Consider the previous slides depicting some of the atypical communication behaviors, such as kicking, that may be observed, which may be the method of communication. It's a behavior or an action. Remember earlier in the presentation we reviewed how infants communicate via actions and behaviors, such as crying or cooing, until the communication system advances and develops. Once we understand ways to aid the child's expressions, then we can help the child to use tools, such as low-tech communication tools, to assist in language understanding and expression, the request, refusals, and expression of feelings or emotions. Sometimes autistic individuals need an alternative method for communicating instead of speech. In these instances, augmentative and alternative communication may be necessary. AAC, the abbreviated term for augmentative and alternative communication, involves all of the ways that someone communicates besides talking or speech. Augmentative means to add to someone's speech. Alternative means to be used instead of speech. Speech language pathologists who have extensive knowledge about communication skills, and especially augmentative and alternative communication, should be consulted to offer more information regarding augmentative and alternative communication. Look for a speech language pathologist that is certified by ASHA, searchable in ASHA's online database. A speech language pathologist may recommend a communication evaluation, for instance, if there's concerns about a child's language development. Low-tech communication tools fall within the category of AAC. Augmentative and alternative communication is included in the evidence-based practices noted by the National Clearinghouse on Autism Evidence and Practice, the NCAEP. The NCAEP has identified 28 research-based practices that have demonstrated the best current methods for assessment and intervention for autism. The evidence-based practice of AAC would include low-tech communication tools for assisting with communication deficits in autism, which is our focus of this presentation. Also, please note the highlighted visual supports, evidence-based practice within the list, which is an important component or piece of a low-tech communication tool. We will highlight the use of visual supports as part of a low-tech communication tool within this presentation as well. So how do we as caregivers and others that interact with autistic individuals bridge the gap in communication? We can use augmentative and alternative communication. We can utilize low-tech communication tools. What are low-tech communication tools? Low-tech communication aids are any type of communication method that is not electronic, but does require some sort of equipment outside one's body. Depending upon the person's level of understanding and expressing language, types of low-tech communication may include objects, pictures, photographs, pen paper, picture communication board, or symbol usage. The low-tech part is that these communication aids do not require batteries or electricity. These aids can be handmade. These low-tech aids do not need power or recharging. Low-tech communication aids can be carried easily from place to place within settings. Low-tech AAC tools are simple communication aids that do not need batteries or electronics, no chips to operate. These are typically lightweight and easy to transport aids for communication. These communication aids can include letters, words, phrases, pictures or symbols on a board or in a book. With low-tech communication tools, the individual can access the object or picture, for example, by simply picking up the object or picture and presenting it to the communication partner. These tools can also be accessed by the individual pointing to the picture, for instance. Sometimes the autistic person will use eye gaze or look to indicate the picture that the person is referencing or that the individual is choosing. Please note that the person using the low-tech communication tools needs a communication partner, since these devices do not generate speech. In other words, the autistic individual will be using the low-tech aid to communicate with another communication partner, such as a family member, peer, community member, or medical professional. In the next slide, we will view an overview of AAC. The presenter informs about different types of AAC devices. The low-tech tools mentioned in the next video, such as picture visuals, are the tools that we are concentrating on today. The picture visuals are the low-tech communication. The following video will provide reasons for using AAC tools and providing access to AAC tools.
Communication is crucial to our everyday lives. We use it to share feelings, stories, ideas, to make friends, and to get our needs met. We began to communicate right from the moment we were born. Communication isn't just speech. We all use gestures, body language, visuals, and text to communicate every day. Communication is about understanding and being understood by others. Some people may need systems or devices to help them communicate. This is known as augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC for short. AAC can be many different things and can do lots of different jobs for people. Sally might need an iPad to talk for her, while Bob needs some picture visuals to help him understand what he needs to do. It's a speech and language therapist's job to work with people to come up with the best AAC solution for their needs. Here are some of the ways AAC is useful. Spoken words are only temporary. AAC provides people with a concrete and permanent visual so they have longer to process information and formulate a response. AAC increases a person's ability to engage with their peers in social situations and to initiate conversations. AAC has been proven to support the natural development of speech and language. Communicating with someone in a way that they can understand opens a door to their beautiful mind. When a person first gets a new piece of AAC, it can seem a little strange and overwhelming. If their family and friends try to use the device as well, it can help it to seem less scary. When you're learning a new language, you need lots of repetitions. It's the same with AAC. People need lots of repetitions often to help them learn how to use it. AAC becomes a person's voice and therefore always needs to be accessible to them. Augmentative and alternative communication ensures that everyone has the opportunity to understand and to be understood, no matter what their challenges are. If you would like to know more about AAC, speak to your speech and language therapist and they will be able to help you out.
In referencing the previous slide regarding the 28 evidence-based practices and reflecting upon intervention strategies, research indicates that using visual supports increases communication, understanding, and usage. Autistic persons tend to respond better to information presented visually, such as pictures, rather than just hearing information presented alone. The visual support is a concrete form of information that can be referred to repeatedly as opposed to the spoken information that disappears. Visual supports, like pictures, help to cue the autistic individual that an event is beginning, ending, or finished. These visuals are key in creating low-tech communication tools. Visual supports also increase an autistic individual's independence in using a communication tool. Did you realize that we use visual supports, words, pictures, within our daily lives? Think about the various pictures, such as the ones depicted in these slides, that help us to navigate our surroundings. We use our communication abilities to interpret the messages. The first picture aids the rider on the train in predicting and knowing the upcoming stops. Thus, this written stop schedule helps the rider to prepare and relieve the unknown of the train suddenly stopping at the point that the rider wanted to exit. The schedule is a built-in visual support representation showing beginning and ending of an activity. We use these types of words and symbols to interpret our surroundings. Our language understanding is aided by the usage of these types of written pictorial tools. These are additional pictures that one may encounter that show the power of pictures and/or words or the combination in conveying a message and in helping us to understand the message. Consider that if one had no previous knowledge of the words ground transportation, how the impact of the pictures of the car and the bus that are beside of the ground transportation sign would aid in our understanding and interpretation of the message. This correlation or connection helps when a low-tech communication tool is created for a person in the autism community who may be experiencing difficulties with understanding and conveying messages. These are examples of low-tech tools utilizing pictures and words. There are no batteries or electrical parts to consider. In continuing to acknowledge how we use words and pictures already, which are sometimes a higher tech tool or a low tech communication tool, then think about how we use menus at a restaurant. In most instances, the restaurant menu is simply comprised of words and pictures on a sturdy material which is sometimes laminated. We use the menus or these low-tech tools to make a choice and help communicate our choice to the restaurant. The same concept applies to choosing items, people, or activities utilizing a low-tech communication tool. The picture on the right shows how these pictures can be used for communication for purposes such as choice making. In this example, the choices may be referring to items or activities that the individual with autism can request, which, in turn, reinforces the communication attempt and usage of the low-tech tool. The laminated pictures have Velcro on the back side so that the pictures can be moved and reused multiple times. Pictures or words do not always need to be laminated. That is not a requirement, since many of these tools are homemade. However, any clear see-through window, such as a photo album, does provide a place to put pictures or words. The photos and/or words would last longer if protected by lamination or within a protective type of sleeve. These frames show pictures of other types of low-tech communication tools, such as the person showing the person indicating a pretzel request. Also, pictures indicating that an activity is all done is shown. The bottom right board shows the larger picture, indicating that this board is for request. This is an example of using short sentences such as "I want" to expand the child's expressive language. If the child chooses the picture of the book, then the communication partner can say "book" and then "I want book" to expand the child's utterance. The communication is immediately rewarded and reinforced since the communication partner could read the child's favorite book to the child or give the book to the child. It's very important to remember that the communication attempt needs to be acted upon so that the child receives communication skills practice and that the child learns the cause and effect of "I point to this," or "I give this picture," and "I obtain this item." Communication that is aided by these low-tech tools helps the child to have some control or choice in life activities instead of all choices being made for the autistic individual. These are some additional examples of pictures that could be used as low-tech tools for communication purposes. A low-tech communication tool can be a single picture. Low-tech communication tools do not need to be complicated. Rather, the opposite is true. For the autistic child, if the child's language understanding and usage is at the single word level, then one word with picture would be appropriate to begin targeting communication effectiveness. As mentioned previously, a speech-language pathologist should be consulted regarding recommendations for types of low-tech communication tools that could be created, whether these low-tech tools are using objects or written words exclusively at the higher level of language understanding and usage. In addition, a mixture of objects, pictures, or words, along with verbalizations or the child's own utterances, could be used. Each low-tech tool is created with the individual's needs in mind. Look closely at the picture of the lanyard-style low-tech AAC tool. This picture highlights the portability of low-tech AAC tools, since many times these tools are handmade. Now, in the next slide, we will watch a brief video that will show AAC tools and tips about creating these AAC tools. Notice the clever usage of cardboard paper and actual food wrappers in the example. There will be a brief pause and then the video will start.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see you all again. I hope you're all staying healthy and safe at home. I wanted to share some tips today on low-tech AAC. I work in early intervention sometimes, and one of the most common things when I go into families' homes is that they often ask for really specific ways to help their children communicate. It's usually that when their child cries, they know that the child is hungry, and now they're like rifling through the cabinet in the refrigerator and pulling out a million things trying to figure out what it is the child wants. And as we get talking, usually there's really like a handful of items that are the favorite items. So I wanted to share a tip that I share with some of my families. This is a low-tech option that you guys could probably implement this week if you wanted. I often recommend you can take pictures and print them out if you have a printer of favorite foods, but I know that that's not a feasible option for some families. So one of the other things I recommend is when you're done with food, just cut out the box or keep the bag. And I literally took a box from Amazon this week and I just stapled them. This one I needed to tape down a little bit to the box. So if you have a stapler, if you have tape, and if you have a box, you should be good to go with making a low-tech system. You can see that I eat like a child, that I have chicken nuggets, M&Ms, mac and cheese, pasta, the Skippy for peanut butter and jelly. But you can have this sitting in the kitchen, and then when your child is hungry, you could ask them, okay, well, what do you want? And maybe they can point to it. This might be even a little bit easier because if your child isn't pointing yet, they could use their whole hand to reach for what they want. So that's one idea. Alternatively, you could not cut these out. Once they're empty, you could clean them if they're a bag or if they're a box, just maybe tape the lid back together. And you could keep the whole boxes in a box, and then when your child wants something, you just open the box and they rifle through the box and they pick out the bag of M&Ms, and you know, okay, go to the cabinet and get M&Ms for them. If your child already has an AAC system, of course you hopefully have these things programmed into their system. But I know a lot of my kids, we were in the middle of trialing stuff, or we have looked at a high-tech device, but it hasn't come yet, and now we're kind of stuck with nothing, and we're just kind of coming up with options. Another option would be that you could use objects to represent items. I want to be clear, there's no hierarchy for AAC. You don't need to use objects and then use photographs and then use a high-tech device. But I know that everyone's home, and we're home for probably a little bit longer, and you might really need something to put in place, and these are things that are usually around the house and easy to find. So for example, my mom put something for Christmas in this box, so I had the box still laying around. It was a good one because it had an easy open lid. You could use any box that's around the house. So in my box I put a fork, and I might use the fork to represent that I want to eat. I have a cup for when I want water. I don't drink juice boxes, so I have a Coke for myself, but you could put a juice box in for your child. I would do an empty juice box because otherwise they're just going to take the juice box and drink it right away. And I really like to read as I'm a little bit bored in this quarantine, so I put in a book that I could use to represent that I want to read. It's important to remember that just putting this fork in the cup and the juice box in the box doesn't necessarily mean your child knows that they can then give it to you. You're going to have to practice teaching them what to do. So maybe you, every time you're about to sit down for mealtime, you take your box with you to the kitchen, you pull out the fork and give it to your child, then have the child hand it over to you. Oh, okay, yep, it's time to eat, you're right. And then you start the mealtime process. So you have to teach them how to use the objects as a symbol. But that's another, again, low-tech option, and you're likely to have that stuff around your house because it's going to be things that you know your child wants to request. If they do, just a little tip, if they do pick book, maybe this is their favorite book and that's why you put it in. I don't know that I would do the favorite book. I would then, once they did that and gave it to me, I would offer some different choices of things we can read. So, okay, do you want to read No More Naps, or do you want to read The Pout Pout Fish, and let them choose that way. You can also, if you have a printer, PRC and Satillo, I only have the PRC ones printed with me here, but they have low-tech manual boards that you can just go online and print out. They have some masked versions too, so they're in different sizes, and they also have them available in Spanish. So like I said, PRC and Satillo have them on their websites. You can go and you can print them and use them. I also have my Pixon board here behind me. You can print out Pixon communication boards. I think this one is a 65, and I have some extra, let me see if I can bring this closer. I have some extra vocabulary here at the top of things, favorite songs, other actions that we like to do, clothing, colors, etc., my craft stuff. So you can, here's all my favorite books. So you can do something like that as well and print it. I had a binding machine at school, but you could also just put hole punches in, and if you have binder clips, you could use binder clips. I've used yarn when I didn't have any binder clips, and I just tied it together with yarn, and it'll hold up not indefinitely, but for now. So those are my ideas on low-tech AAC. I hope they were helpful for you guys. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thanks. Stay safe and healthy.
These photos depict the modeling and practicing of using pictures as part of a low-tech communication tool. This picture series shows how to model the language request. The child would give the picture of the orange to the communication partner. The communication partner would give the requested orange to the child. Again, the child would give the picture of the orange to the communication partner. The communication partner would give the requested orange to the child. One of the keys to success when creating and using a low-tech communication tool is to consider the child's preferences. Offer opportunities to make choices. Follow through with the child's choice or request immediately as the child is learning to use low-tech communication tools. By delaying or not acting upon the child's request, the child may continue to act out as the form of communication instead of using the low-tech communication tool. The child needs multiple experiences that prove that using the mutually understood low-tech communication tool does indeed allow for the needs to be met, expression of feelings, or rejecting of items. These are examples of quickly and easily created low-tech communication tools created using an index card and an empty photo album. The pictures in the photo album can be easily changed while the photo album is portable from place to place in the child's setting. Now, let's set the stage for learning some very basic tips about modeling with an AAC tool. Just how do we begin to teach a child to use the tool? The aim of this next video is to provide some basic tips about how to model use of an AAC tool like a low-tech communication tool using pictures. The low-tech communication tools mentioned are the ones that will appear that show the communication book and the symbols. Let's watch. Always pair the spoken word with the object or picture. For instance, when the child may need help with an activity such as putting on a coat, then ask, "Need help?" Then say, "Help," as you point to the picture of help. Keep your verbal response simple. Assist the child with pointing to the picture of help or handing the picture of help to you if the child does not respond or appears to be confused. Use this same sequence of modeling to offer many opportunities during the child's everyday routines for practicing asking for help. Everyday routines or activities could include putting the straw into the juice box at mealtime, buckling the seatbelt in the car, obtaining an item that may be out of the child's reach, such as the child's backpack, turning the page during story time, or turning on the child's favorite music. Targeting communication understanding and usage with low-tech communication tools always involves patience and wait time. Always provide a short wait period for the child to point to the object or picture independently. For example, before assisting the child with hand-over-hand pointing or selection, keep in mind that this is dependent upon the child's level of language understanding and usage. Expand upon the child's vocalization attempts. For autistic children who are first-time users of a low-tech communication tool, keep in mind that less is sometimes more, which means a low-tech communication board or booklet that has one picture or just a few pictures, such as 1 to 2 pictures, may be the level that is appropriate in this stage of the child's development. Loading a low-tech communication board with many pictures that have not been trained or practiced will only lead to further frustration for the autistic child. Add or change up the level, such as going from 2 words to maybe 3 words as the child uses the board more frequently and shows success with the communication attempts. Always verbally say the name of the item or the emotion, picture, or word, which is pairing the picture word with your verbalization. For instance, the communication partner would say or model the spoken words, "Pretzel, get the pretzels, please." It is not required that the autistic individual say the word. Do not insist that the autistic individual say the word. The goal is to assist the autistic individual with overall communication. Consult with a speech-language pathologist regarding recommendations for spoken language development and overall communication development. Communication opportunities are available every day to practice and model using low-tech communication tools. Here's a few examples of when a low-tech communication tool could be used. For instance, at mealtime. This is such a rewarding time since food is usually a natural reinforcer. The child could request a snack. Bath time is another example of an opportunity when lots of language understanding and usage is occurring. The low-tech tool could be used to request bubbles or help signal that bath time is getting ready to be finished. Another real-world opportunity may be the feeding or care of a pet. The picture of the pet or showing the pet's name on the low-tech tool along with a simple drawing or picture of the dog, for instance, if the family has a dog, would model the usage of the low-tech communication tool. Still, other examples of opportunities and situations to possibly include usage of a low-tech communication board include car rides. Use a picture to help the child associate that the child is going to the car. Grocery shopping. Use objects, pictures, or a low-tech communication booklet to label and help the child identify the foods that are being bought, such as a picture of an apple. The child could even select if they would prefer a green apple or a red apple, for instance. More experience with language practice and usage could include using pictures or photographs of community members or particular places and settings to help the autistic individual identify and prepare for visits with teachers, doctors, nurses, medical professionals, and/or friends. Low-tech AAC cards can also help in signaling that the event is about to happen or end. Family members and pictures of family members are a great motivator for practicing using a low-tech communication tool. The child could request to talk to the family member or maybe even use FaceTime along with the caregiver's help to reward and reinforce the child's communication practice. The family member that is requested could possibly play a fun game in person with the child or join in a play activity with the child's favorite toy, which are extremely motivating activities to request. And in turn, these types of opportunities reinforce that communicating using the low-tech AAC tool with or without the child's verbalization attempt to accompany it does indeed get results for the autistic person who is experiencing frustration when attempting to communicate. The success of using the low-tech communication tool should lead to further successes with communication. Language development is occurring every day, all throughout the day. To build upon the child's usage of low-tech communication tools, help the child to practice the tool and carry over the skills to include various people, situations, locations, times of day, etc. When the autistic person becomes successful in a setting, then attempting to carry over the skill to a new communication partner or within a different location could be tried. Carryover of skills may be a challenging aspect of communication development for autistic persons. Here's some tips for professionals and families. Families should consult with the child's physician and teachers regarding concerns about their child's language development and/or need for referral for speech-language therapy evaluation or services. Mental health professionals should ask the parents of a child with autism if the child is receiving speech-language therapy services. Medical professionals should ask families about current status or method of supports that caregivers are successfully using at home. Then, both families and professionals could utilize the same or similar low-tech communication tools or supports during interactions or therapy office visits to facilitate further communication practice opportunities for individuals with autism. Professionals can then prepare their office or therapy setting before an autistic individual's visit with possible reinforcing or motivating items based upon this prior consultation with the family. It is important to consider that when families and professionals show interest in the same things that interest the person with autism, then the person with autism will be more open to communicating and seeking or responding to communication attempts. The resources page of this presentation will house a copy of this presentation along with additional resources for autism. What questions do you have after receiving this training? My contact information is included on this slide if you need further information.
Thank you for watching this video. Please take a moment to complete this short feedback form by scanning the QR code or typing the URL into your web browser. Thank you.
The reference page can be accessed in order to find more information. These are additional references. Please remember to access the QR code with your phone at the beginning of the presentation. I thank you so much for participating and listening to the presentation regarding autism and communication. Thank you.